Hello.
Hi, how you doing, Michelle?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to see you this evening.
It's been a while. It's good to see you. I missed last week. It made me sad.
I know it was definitely different, not to have a live and have our normal together time. So I definitely missed it. So I'm looking forward to what we're going to do today for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Whew, okay. So, I'm looks like we have a few people in chat. I don't know why I'm having trouble getting chat.
Yeah, I don't see anyone in chat actually on my side.
Well, I see people talking. I just don't see it on my screen. We have people in there. It's just not showing on StreamYard.
Okay.
Weird.
That is weird. Okay, hold on. I don't know how to fix that.
We are flying solo, guys. We're giving this a
Yes.
good shot. So.
Okay, let's see. So I do see we have.
We're solo, guys. We're giving this a good shot. So.
Okay, let's see. So we have Brian from Slapshot. We're happy to see you. Good evening.
I am hearing your YouTube, maybe?
Slapshot. We're happy to see you. Good evening. Hold on, I'm gonna get assistance. Give me one second.
Well, hello everybody. We are going solo now. It's just Jen and I running this channel. We've had a person in the background helping us out, and we are going to take this full-on Women of Whiskeys. So bear with us as we try and get over some of these humps a little bit. We appreciate you. So do we still have the echo? Are you still hearing the echo?
No, the echo's gone.
Okay, perfect. And I am still not seeing chat, so I don't know what's going on with that, but I can see it on my phone, so we'll be fine.
Okay. All right. So let's try this again, shall we?
Okay.
All right. It's great to see everyone. We are still working on the chat part of StreamYard. It's not working for us. So just bear with us. We appreciate your patience. Like I said, Brian Slapshot, we're happy you're here.
You listed as a private video. That's why.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So we are making a cocktail tonight. And hi. So we are making a cocktail tonight. We are making the Kentucky 75. It is a twist on the French 75, which is made with gin. But we're not going to make it with gin. We're going to make it with bourbon. So we do have those ingredients down in the description. And so if you want to make along with us, that is fine. It's very simple. I found a lot of these ingredients in my house, actually. So I chose a fancy schmancy glass to make mine in tonight. Now, and let's see, who do we have in here? We've got, oh my goodness, look at that. We got John T. Cheers. And I'm going to try and see this on my phone. I'm so sorry, guys. StreamYard's hating us today.
No, it's not okay.
So we have John T. Cheers. We have Rye Guy, OH, Blind Cat 420. Looks like we have quite a few. We have maybe 45 in chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so Whiskey Mountains is here. That was a great live she did earlier tonight with all the Elijah Craig barrel proofs, the C cups, she called it. So that was fun. All right, are we ready to make our cocktail? So a Kentucky 75, we are going to start with 2 ounces of bourbon. Any favorite bourbon should work. Okay. I am choosing a New Riff.
Perfect.
Hey, Jason from the Mash and Drum is here. Hello, how are you?
Awesome. I'm happy you're all here. I am very happy to say that I can see the chat on StreamYard now.
Yay,
I want
there
to
it
give
is.
a big shout out to Cheech for helping me troubleshoot and saving my ship. Love you.
And
I'm very happy.
it sounds
So
like it was something I did when I listed the video in my StreamYard. It's my first time hosting on my StreamYard, so
and I didn't know. But so now I know. You just have to change the setting from private to public so that we can see the chat. So, hey, we learned something new. So thank you everyone for bearing with us. Cheech, thanks for helping out. We do appreciate it. And I know Michelle is making a delicious cocktail right now. So let's definitely get back to her.
Okay. Again, Kentucky 75. So we're going to put in our lemon juice. And who else? We got Nick Proman in here, William Davilar's in here, Emily Chambers. That's my homemade simple syrup.
Adriana, Whiskey Mountains, we're happy you're here. Will, awesome to see you as always. Scott Pigsley, cheers. I'm happy you're here. While Michelle's making this, I'm sipping on some Midwinter's Night Dram, which is delicious.
I have a backup.
Oh, do you?
Okay.
Cheers, Jerry Black. Happy you're here. Ooh, bitters. Awesome. Rye Guy, nice to see you. Cool 62 Chev, we're happy you're here. Hello and cheers.
Okay, so I've got all my ingredients in here. The ingredients were in the description. Is anybody making this along with us? That's what I'd be curious to know.
Let's see. Swilly Nelson, cheers to Midwinter. Cheers, we're happy you're here.
Prosecco.
Nice. Yeah, I actually had to have Cheech go and get me some today, and they only had like a 4-pack of this Little Cooks of Brute. So I was like, hey, it comes in a 4-pack though. So I've got 3 extras so I can make some other cocktails.
Okay, so there you have it, a Kentucky 75. Cheers to everyone. I hope you're drinking along with us. If not, make it Sunday. It's a nice sparkly drink.
Cheers. That's interesting.
I did not try this before making it, so this is a blind reaction.
It's actually really dry, to be honest with you.
Really what?
Dry.
So I added a sweeter Prosecco, but I put in less simple syrup because of the fact that I was using a sweet Prosecco. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know. Maybe there is a version of this called a Kentucky 95, and you can add orange juice to it, and you take the bitters out.
That actually would help it out a lot. It's really dry. You would need a little bit something sweeter.
Yeah.
To go with that. Cheers, Old Man Joe. We're happy you're here.
Okay, so lesson learned. If you like a really dry drink, then a Kentucky 75 might just be for you. But if you like it a little on the sweeter side, maybe a Kentucky 95.
Let's see. We have Kevin and Michelle Cuphart.
Cheers.
We are here. We're happy you're here. Cheers. I hope you're drinking along with us or sipping some very good whiskey. All right. We have Jarrell Stewart. Cheers, y'all. Cheers to you. We're happy you're here.
Okay, so
Bourbon Waller.
Sorry. For those of you just joining us, we just made our Kentucky 75. Decided maybe we should have made the 95. And we are covering a case today of a serial killer. We are going to do Gary Ridgway, and he is the Green River Killer. So he was considered one of the most dangerous serial killers out there because of the number of women that he killed in such a short period of time and able to elude the police for a long period of time. So up until recently, they did think that he had killed the most in American history, but now he's second on the list.
Yes, he is second behind Samuel, who actually has, I think it is almost 90 confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
So he was one of the most prolific serial killers in our history. His name was Samuel Little, and he actually died in prison at the ripe old age of 80. So luckily he's no longer here, but he did get the title, I guess, since they do go for that once they reach a certain point. So he is second, the most prolific, only because of how long he did go undetected and his confirmed count.
Yeah, and he swears that he actually killed between 71 and 80 girls. He was only charged with, in the end, I believe, 49. So with that, let's go ahead and start jumping in. So it's Gary Leon Ridgway, and he, between 1982 and 1998 in Washington State in the Seattle area, he went on this massive killing spree. Most of those were done within 2 years. So this was in what they call the SeaTac area. It's just south of Seattle and north of Tacoma by the SeaTac Seattle Airport. And, he was eventually convicted, but nothing happened to him until 2001. Yes. So that is a long time if you think about it. That's decades of eluding police. This guy was, not only was he good at what he did, but he had absolutely no feelings, no remorse, no emotions about any of it. So
absolutely.
It's pretty, it was so hard to catch him. They actually enlisted Ted Bundy to help try and find him. And I'm sure you all know who Ted Bundy is. Whiskey Mountain's frickin' Pacific Northwest for murder. Yeah, true. So, and ironically, the weird thing about this is when this was going on, I was, 9, 10 years old. And I lived in the Seattle area in Mount Lake Terrace, which is north. And it didn't matter if you lived north or south. The whole area was terrified. I couldn't even walk the half a block from the bus stop to my house by myself. So, Mike Stahl, Bundy did volunteer. They were really apprehensive about it. But at that point, they were like, what do we have to lose at this point? So they went and talked with him.
Oh, old man Joe remembers the Green River murders. Very nice.
Yeah. And that's not too far from where Lone Wonder 360 is as well. It was interesting. I mean, people were terrified because there was no leads and it was like just the bodies were just piling up. So let's jump into it.
Absolutely.
So he was born actually in Salt Lake City, Utah, Adriana, in your neck of the woods. And he was born in 1949. And I have to check my notes because I always like to get the facts just right. So he had 2 brothers, one older, one younger. And they were very athletic and they were intelligent. And he was not. He was not smart. His IQ, I believe, was like 82. They think he might have had dyslexia. And so he always felt a little less than. His father, Tom Ridgway, drove a bus for the county. And he had this weird thing. He would bring along little Gary and he'd ride along on the bus sometimes and they'd be going down like Highway 99. And that's where all the, sex workers and stuff were at. It was like they were on every corner. And he would say, those are prostitutes. They're bottom of the barrel. They're trash. And he just had a disdain for them. And this was instilled in Gary at a very young age.
Yeah, his father did this constantly the entire time he was a bus driver because he did drive by the Strip. It was on his route. He did not like what he saw, and he let his sons know. Gary really was the one that he had a lot of those conversations with out of all 3 of the boys.
Yeah. And the odd thing about that was there were also times that he would take his personal vehicle and take Gary along with him and then leave him in the vehicle while he went and did his business with one of those prostitutes and then come back and talk about how horrible they were. So it was very confusing.
Yeah, he had a lot of conflicting information and emotions given from both of his parents during his upbringing. So they he did not have a stable upbringing, I'll say.
Exactly. And, you know, and his mother was a homemaker, and her name was Mary. And Mary Ridgway was a homemaker that also worked as a store clerk part-time. But when you hear like the mothers and the neighbors talk about Mary, the biggest thing that they would say is that she was way too sensual. She wore the short skirts. She was very provocative. They didn't like her to be at the school events because, you know, you didn't dress like that back then. And if you did, you weren't wanted in the carpool. So they talked about how she enjoyed being sexual. She liked the attention. And this was hard on Gary because his mother, in his mind, you know, he wanted that loving homemaker mom. And not only was she being provocative and wearing these revealing clothing, she was awful to him. She would belittle him, and she was very, very domineering. In fact, as an adult, when he was married, she controlled his bills then. She was like over the top.
She controlled the house. So she definitely was the disciplinarian within the home. She was domineering. She was not the loving, let me take care of you type of mother. And she was also physically abusive to his father. And his father didn't like defend himself. He didn't do anything about it. He kind of just took it and like went away. He worked a lot, and, you know, she'd hit him with a pan, she'd hit him with plates, and, you know, he would just, you know, saunter away and he wouldn't do anything about it. So his son saw this. And so that's the vision that he had as a woman, as his mother. Mm-hmm. And that's usually how you look at your own women farther in your life.
Yeah, and he would say later that he felt completely powerless in his household. And he did struggle with bedwetting. And this was an issue that happened all the way into his teens. Like, it was almost a nightly occurrence where he would wet the bed. And she would berate him for it. She would humiliate him in front of the family. And even worse, every time he did it, she would make him get into the bathtub where she could wash him. And we're talking about a teenage boy. And she would wash his areas. And a lot of times she's wearing little negligees. And so he would get very confused. He would talk later very frankly about the fact that he was so angry towards her, yet he kind of wanted to have sex with her.
Yeah, he had a lot of conflicting feelings, and it started when he was a teenager, only because she was still doing that ritualistic, oh, you wet the bed, I need to clean you deal that you do with like a toddler. So he did have those feelings of, I want to have sex with my mom, but I want to turn around and I want to murder her. So he had that.
Kill her, sleep with her. I don't know.
Yeah, so he had those conflicting feelings back then because of all these issues with his mom.
Yeah. And he would say later, they'd say, well, what did you want to do to her? And he would say, I wanted to slice her up. I wanted to ruin that beauty that was so important to her and take it away by just slicing her all over. Ew. Okay. So he definitely did have some mommy issues. It really worked the way he looked at women. So let's see. He's conflicted about the prostitutes. He's conflicted about his mom. And he feels completely ignorant and powerless in his home. Okay. So they would say that he was a very angry adolescent. Like, his friends and his neighbors would say he was always mad. And he was known to hurt the neighborhood cats. And he had a BB gun, and he would shoot them as many times as he could without killing them to see how much pain they could take.
Yes.
And
he said he needed an outlet. So his defense of all that was, well, I didn't know how else to take out my anger and my resentment and all these feelings that I had towards my mom and, my dad not doing anything. He's taking a beating, and then he's telling me prostitutes are horrible, but then he's going out and having sex with them the same day, like, what the fuck's going on kind of deal.
Yeah. I mean, and then, he also was known, he loved fires. He loved to start fires. And, so it's like the serial killer trifecta: bedwetting, animal cruelty, and fires. Like,
yes,
red flags all across the board. I mean, did we not see this coming? So,
yeah, red flags were there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, his first known assault was when he was 16. He took this little 6-year-old little boy and, hey, let's go for a walk, let's be friends, takes him out in the woods and stabs him between the ribs and into his liver. And then laughs at him
and walks
and
away.
says, I just wanted to know what it was like to kill, and walked away.
Absolutely.
At 16. And so this little 6-year-old boy did survive. But he got in absolutely no trouble for this. There was nothing happened to him at all.
Adriana, you are absolutely correct. That is the McDonald's triad.
Yeah. Yep, it is. So makes me wonder, like, where's that 6-year-old boy now? I mean, God, I'd be so angry that like nothing happened. He wasn't
nothing
arrested or
happened,
anything.
and he did it right between his ribs and punctured his lung. So he lived. He was able to tell who did it, and nothing happened to him. He was 16, and not even a slap on the wrist. Like, nothing. He was able to get away with it. His behavior wasn't being checked by anyone except his mom, but he was acting out because of her. So he had no control there. So he was controlling outside of his home.
So for those of you just joining us, we're going over the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway case. And this guy, man, all the signs were there. So in fact, he struggled so much, he went an extra 2 years of high school. He had to repeat one of those years of high school like 2 times. So you could see he had no self-esteem at all.
No.
So when he graduates, finally, he enlists in the Navy. Prior to that, he was dating Claudia Barrows, who he got shipped off. They ended up getting married. And while he was sent to the Philippines, deployed, that's the word. He was deployed to the Philippines, which is where he started frequenting prostitutes. Frequenting, I don't know, what's the word? Not freak. You don't frequent a prostitute. Well, maybe you do.
Visit.
Play with, I don't know.
Yeah, something.
So then there's those feelings again, like, I love them, but I hate them, but I love them.
Absolutely.
And what I understand is that he did this, he went a lot, like it was almost obsessive.
Yeah, like his comrades in the military, when they were spoke to afterwards, was saying it was kind of common that, they would visit these brothels and all of this kind of stuff. But Ridgway kind of went like all the time, like blatantly. And so it was very apparent that he went. And then plus on top of that, he ended up getting gonorrhea twice there. And he got very angry towards the prostitutes because he's like, you're doing a service, I'm paying you for a service, and you're giving me something I don't want. But he never stopped going to those brothels.
But he was
just
angry
kept on
about
going.
It. He was like slighted.
But he just kept getting mad the more times he ended up, having issues later.
Like, they gave me chlamydia and they gave me gonorrhea, but man, I sure do like them. I hate them. So
yeah, he did not have a good relationship with women in general up through this point.
Yeah, exactly. So he does this deployment. He comes home. I think he was gone for 2 years, did his stint in the Navy, came back. Well, Claudia had an affair while he was gone. So she decides, you know what? I'm just going to leave him. So she divorces him.
Yes, Cheech, you get what you pay for, and apparently something a little extra for free.
Well, there's that.
Absolutely. Hey, Bourbon, I see that you popped in, so it's nice to see you, as well as Repeat History. I saw you pop in as well. It's nice to see you, and cheers.
So Claudia leaves. She is like running for the hills. I don't want this. You know what? He's back now. I didn't really like him that much anyway. So
yeah, not a big deal.
Yeah, but he doesn't stay that way for long. They divorced in 1972. He remarried in 1973 to Marcia Winslow.
Yes.
So people say that that him and Marcia were like they were very frisky. He got a job as a truck painter, and they would like on his breaks and at lunch, she would come and they'd go out to the truck and get busy. And that it was like an obsession, and that it wasn't, he liked to go in places where they might get caught. It wasn't like, let's just go in the bedroom and make love. He liked a little bit of something going on in there, and it was all the time.
Yeah, they would state later, his ex-girlfriends and his ex-wives, that he had a very, very high sexual appetite, like 5-6 times a day. And it was out in the woods, in his truck, let me tie you to a tree, all of these types of things, chokeholds,
Let me tie you to a tree.
You're into that, whatever. I'm not down in that if you're into it. But don't kill people. So, his appetite was just huge. He liked all of these different things that not a lot of women would partake in. So his ex-wives were like, yeah, I would do it like 2 times a day. We'd go to the woods, that kind of thing. But it wasn't anything like, in the bedroom at home after like a nice glass of wine or anything like that. It was, I'm tying your ass to a tree and we're going to see how this goes.
Yeah. And eventually she ended up leaving him because they did have a son together, Matthew. And he did love that boy, but he would kind of the same thing, take him with him to go places, give him a snack in the car, kind of repeating that behavior.
Yeah, his son actually was a lure for him. So he would actually show his son's picture to prostitutes so that they would feel more comfortable getting in the car. They're like, okay, so this guy's got a, like, because sometimes he show his work ID. So like, oh, he's got a job, he's got a kid, he just isn't getting what he needs. So he just needs a little help out. And so that's what he would use, because he saw that women normally have a good soft nature towards children. And they don't think that you're gonna, take them out after you show them a picture of your kid.
Well, and so they have this son together. He loves the kid, but he would get angry. And later he would talk about it, and they would say, well, when you got angry with your wife, what would happen? He'd go, well, I'd choke her. Sometimes I'd strike her, but mostly I just choked her.
Yeah, no big deal.
No big deal. So finally, I think she just got tired of being choked, and she was like, I'm out. I'm gonna take my kid and I'm gonna go.
Yeah, so she dipped before anything got any worse.
Yeah, and she did get full custody. She took full custody of the son, but she let him have the weekend visits and stuff.
Yeah, so all his wives would later state, he was a little weird, bedroom wise. He would leave in the middle of the night, or he'd leave like super early for work and just say, oh, I got to get there early. It's overtime, that kind of thing. But his wives never said that they thought he was out, taking out almost 71 women, through this time frame. So they just stated, he just had a weird sex thing, and he was able to provide for his son. He paid bills. He did those kinds of things where they wouldn't look at, like, where is he at? Why isn't he doing certain things at home, taking care of things here? He was taking care of both. So there wasn't any reason for them to get suspicious of things.
Yeah. And as far as they know, they didn't find the first body until a decade later, but he says that he killed his first person in around 1971-ish, which would be right about the time that he got divorced and he got angry at his first wife. So, but he kept a steady job, which is so unusual for serial killers. He worked as a truck painter at Kenworth for 32 years. So he was like that family man that held a good job. Everybody said he was, really nice, not the brightest light bulb, but so a little bit not your usual profile.
Right. So he actually had normal relationships with people he worked with. The people he worked with didn't say that he was odd, strange, or anything like that. Just, he came to work, he did his job. It wasn't any red flags there. He was very good at putting on, like, hey, I'm an okay guy. I'm here to do my job and support my family, and that be it. So he was really good on playing both sides of it, to kind of hide what his natural intentions are.
Yeah. Except for in 1982 when he got arrested for soliciting a prostitute.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is when we start getting into him starting to be on the radar for police officers, because he's starting to get in a little bit of trouble with solicitation. And they're like, okay, you know, here's your ticket. Go on your merry way. Kind of don't come back. His, you know, he did frequent the Strip, only because the Strip was on his way to and from work. So he saw these same women every day going to and from work and all of this. So he knew who they were. He knew where they were at and things like that. So he had a very good, unfortunately, MO for himself because nobody knew who he was.
Well, and so the Strip, just so you guys know, is Highway 99. It was kind of like the red light district of the Seattle area. And it was a long stretch, which is, you don't want to walk alone in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of brothels and strip clubs and things of that nature. And
hotels by the hour.
And it's like, I think it's between like Seattle and like Tacoma areas, like they were saying. And it's a known area for prostitution.
So quick story. One time, William and I had to catch a flight or something really early in the morning. And we drove up to Seattle. We just wanted a really cheap hotel because we wanted to take like a 4-hour nap, just get one night at the hotel. And they're like, just pay cash. Okay. We go in and there's like those little dust marks where there used to be a picture. And there's like stuff on the floor where you think it might be blood, but you're just not sure. It was creepy as shit. We didn't know.
Yeah. You know, always bring a little black light with you. You know, you never know what you're going to
find. We laid our
find.
coats down and slept on top of our coats.
Yeah. Sometimes
really
places are scary.
We were young and broke and, you know.
No, I totally understand.
So anyway, so in May of 1982, he gets arrested for prostitution.
Yes.
Now, this is only 2 months before they find the first body. So the first body is discovered by a couple of kids that are out there. They're looking over the bridge down to the Green River, which runs along that area. And they see something in the water. So they go down there and they see these brand new white tennis shoes. So he's about to pick this bag up out of the water and they realize it's a body. So this was a 16-year-old girl named Wendy Caulfield. Now, she had been strangled with her pants and she had a broken arm and there was a jacket wrapped around her head. The guy who found her said to this day, he can't like look at a woman with wet hair under the water, like a bath or swimming or anything like that.
Yeah, it was not good for that guy. It was when they found the first one, it just set off a storm of what was to come.
They had no idea what was coming when they found that body.
No,
so
not at all.
They find this body July 15th, 1982. And in the next month, they find 4 more bodies that they pulled from the river. So that's 5 bodies in 1 month that they pull from the Green River. Hence the name, the Green River Killer.
Yes. So once they found the 5, the media got a hold of it, of course, because now they're like, okay, you've pulled 5 bodies out. Like there's something going on. Of course, we know the media loves a good title and a good name to be able to, unfortunately, sell news. So they came up with the Green River Killer because this is where he was dumping bodies initially, and they had found 5 not too far apart.
So this was, let me get this straight. Okay, July 15th of 1982. September of 1982, they pull another body out, but this is in a wooded area 5 miles from the river. So this is in Des Moines Creek, for those of you in the Pacific Northwest that might know where that is. And this was the body of Gazelle Laverne, who was 17 years old. So as you can see, these are like teenage girls. And they were mostly prostitutes, very vulnerable girls. You know, as he said once, it was like picking candy out of a bowl.
Yes. So he did prostitutes. He did runaways, hitchhikers, back in, the 70s and 80s. Hitchhiking was a-okay place, to get yourself from one place to another. So he picked him up. Oh, you need a ride to the movies. Oh, it's raining. Do you need a ride home? Playing the, hey, I'm just trying to do something nice for you. And he took advantage of these girls and these women, unfortunately. And he, like you said, he picked them specifically because if you're a sex worker or runaway, it's going to be a long time before someone is going to say that you're missing. Because a lot of those individuals have addiction issues, or they're doing it to support a family. And so they're not going to report back to their internal family. So when they do go missing, it takes a long time for them to be reported. It could be months, it could be years.
Or not at all.
Or not at all. Yeah.
So, and he also, it wasn't like he just went and picked up any prostitute. He picked up the ones that were young, lonely, maybe new on the streets, that if he flipped out his wallet and just kind of casually let them see that he had a picture of his son there, or he would leave his son's toys in the car, they would think, family man. Yeah, that's cool. I'm safe.
Yeah.
So 1982, all of a sudden they're pulling these bodies up, and then a crap ton of girls just go missing, and they're all from this same Highway 99 area. So they're pulling bodies out left and right. Girls are going missing. They have nothing to go on at all. So they bring in an FBI profiler.
Yes.
Now, we all hear about these profiles. They're like, okay, he's a white male that keeps to himself. He can't hold a steady job, might live in his mom's basement. Yeah. And they were way off on this profile, honestly. I didn't feel it was close at all.
They were not. The profile they had was someone that actually was still kind of living with the mom, either in a basement or still in the same house. Someone that did not have a social life. They got the profile very wrong, unfortunately, which kind of made them go a different direction of looking after who they should be on different suspects.
Oh, cheers, Big Vic. Glad you dropped in. Nice to see ya. I know it's really hard for us to engage in chat because this is a lot of information on this case. And so we kind of have to get through it and be accurate. So please don't think we're ignoring you. We are reading the chats as they come through now that we can see them.
Yeah. So JMax, there is a few movies that have come out regarding the Green River Killer. There are tons of them. If you want to, there are his confession tapes, which are out there. As well as different interviews that he's done. You can definitely see those, but they have come out with a few movies, and they're always going to have that twist on it. So I would definitely do a little research before you saw the movie, because they are going to take a little bit of creative control on that.
I'll be honest, there's a really good documentary that came out in 2020, I think it was, that is really good. It's pretty spot on. It really lined up with our research. So I want to say it was Discovery or A&E, one of those two.
So there is one on Amazon under the Mugshot Collection.
That's a good one too.
That he actually goes into talking to him. That shows some of his interviews with the police. And then there's one on Netflix as well called Catching Killers, which talks with the police officers that dealt with apprehending him up until the point of 2001.
Yeah. Oh, it was ID Discovery that I saw the one on, Mind of a Killer or something like that. So anyway, okay, back into the case. So they find the bodies. They're starting to freak out. They get this profiler who is way off base. And so Gary would later say that he would pick these prostitutes up. He would have sex with them. And then, he really felt the urge to kill, but sometimes he just didn't want to have to pay for the sex. So he would just go, gosh, I'm going to have to kill her now because I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, he wasn't picky. He didn't really need a reason. It was like any little thing that he felt pissed him off at that particular point. And he would use that as his excuse per se. of why he did,
Yeah.
this one made me mad. This one wasn't satisfactory. This one was going to charge too much. A myriad of reasons of why he thinks, prostitutes need to be taken out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just have to say, Jen, this cocktail is not up my alley. I did not pick a good one for me. So I'm just going to drink the Prosecco that's sitting here.
Yeah, do that. Absolutely. I have a pour of Midwinter on the side as well. I'm still sipping on the cocktail, but that's the thing about cocktails. You never know what you're going to like. So, yeah. Hopefully people in chat tried it and maybe
I'm sure it's not a bad drink. It's just a little bit different than I'm not a huge cocktail person anyway, but I keep trying. So, okay. So now that we've done this, in November of 1982, something unbelievable happens. Yes. Rebecca Ridgway, and I hope I'm saying that right because I tend to screw people's names up. She was a girl that he picked up and she managed to escape. He said later that he went to strangle her with his arm and his pants were around his ankles. So he couldn't get his legs around her to hold her down. He said, that was my bad. So,
yeah, absolutely. And
so she's very lucky. She ran like the wind and she got away.
Good for her. She bit him and she was able
she bit him. That's right.
To get away.
Then he had his pants down and couldn't do anything about it.
He couldn't get to her because he was actually in a compromising position, which he normally doesn't actually put himself in. So, unfortunately, he learned from that. But thankfully, she was able to get away from him.
Yeah, and he said, he's like, I made a mistake, and I'll never make that mistake again.
Yes, Scott Pigsley. He was the Karen of serial killers. He bitched a lot, and that was his reason.
Everything and anything hurt his feelings, and you were going to pay for it because it was your fault, not his.
Yeah, he was a little bit of a bitch.
Yeah, and so at this point, he's killing a girl about every other week at the least, according to when you watch his confession tapes. He's like, yeah, I was killing about a girl a week and you guys didn't know who I was or what I was doing. And I just felt this urge for a fresh kill. Like I really wanted to kill these girls. Steve Burko's asking about the evidence that he let any of the women go. I have not seen anything about that. I have seen a lot of girls that didn't get in the car. And there was a couple of girls that said they had a one-night stand with him and nothing happened. So they must have made him feel special for that evening and nothing triggered him. But there's a few that just like, maybe they weren't prostitutes. They were more like he met in a bar, it sounded like.
Yeah, there were two women that met at a bar and they just had, like, hey, we had a few drinks, let's go, have a little randy and then, go our separate ways. So he didn't look at those individuals as low as he did prostitutes. So he looked at them more on a equal footing and not below him as a person. So the prostitutes were disposable, one night stands or, having a friend with benefits, he was completely fine with, and those women were fine.
So as long as you weren't a prostitute or as long as you didn't piss him off, you could probably just have sex with him.
Yeah, you're good to go at that point.
Okay. So he did say he would take them home. That's what he preferred to do, was take them home, have sex, and kill them. But if they, a lot of times prostitutes are like, I'm not going to your house. I don't know you. So if they wouldn't go to his house, he would drive to a secluded area and they would get in the back of his pickup and he'd strangle them with his arm and kill them.
Yeah. And that was his normal manner, would be the chokehold from behind with his arm. And then if they wiggled, it would be kind of like he threw his legs around them, like kind of like a bear hold. And that is because he learned from the girl that got away. Because after that point, never did he put himself in that position. It was always from a behind situation. And then that way he was able to do exactly what he wanted. And there wasn't any issue of him, murdering them and getting what he needed.
And so he would say, like, I would just coerce them into, like, I can get there faster because prostitute wants it over. It's like, I can do it faster if you just flip over and, get face down, and then
he did have a few do that, and one he ended up actually murdering, because he was like, I wasn't ready yet, and she was rushing it, so I killed her, and that was it.
He actually dated that girl, and it was a bartender, and she liked him, and he said I had feelings for her, I cared for her, but then she had to go to work one day, and she was like, hey, I'm gonna be late for work, you need to finish up. And I felt like she was discarding me, so I had to kill her.
Yep. And that was
Don't discard your men. They're going to kill you.
Exactly.
Okay. So at this point, we are in March and April of 1983. 6 more women go missing. They found another body. April of 1983. Now, this is a weird one. So Marie Malver, she's 18. She's, down on that same strip, and she gets into the truck, and her boyfriend / pimp did what he always does and followed her and then at the stoplight lost the truck. So he went back to where they started, and she never came back. So him and the family go driving around and looking for this truck. Well, they find it.
Yeah.
They find this truck because it had some Bondo and primer on the front of the truck, so it was easy to spot. So they call the police. The police go to the door. They knock on the door. He's like, hey, man, no, of course there's no woman here. Well, the cop had gone to school with him. He's like, oh, Gary can't be the Green River Killer. I went to school with him. It's not Gary. It's Gary.
No problem.
Come to find out, she was in that house at the time that cop was at the door, and nothing came of it. Nothing.
No. And her boyfriend, per se, told him everything about this guy, because he was like, I watch her get into these cars because, she makes her money, that kind of thing, and gave him the license plate number and everything. So it was like he was right there, and they're just like, oh, hey, bro, nice to see you again. I know it's not you. You don't have this girl here, do you? He's like, oh, no, I'm good. No. And they left, and, and unfortunately.
It's sad. I mean, it could have stopped right there, and that information never made it to the task force.
No.
It stopped with that cop. So this is also about like a week later is when he killed his girlfriend. But not killed her, but that's when they found her body. Excuse me. They found her body in Maple Valley, but this was different than the other girls. This one was staged. It had a bottle of wine and a fish and some sausage.
Yes.
Wine, fish, and sausage.
Yeah.
So there was people that thought maybe it was a religious undertone, but later when he was interviewed, and I don't know if this is true, but when he was interviewed, he said, well, it was kind of like cleaning out my refrigerator. It was throwing out the trash. Really? Yeah, wine and fish. Sounds a lot like the Last Supper to me, but I don't know. And it sounded like that to a lot of people. So at this point, there's 23 women that are confirmed missing from that strip. So there's the bodies being found, but there's also 23 women that have just vanished in this short period of time. We're talking like, what are we, at a year now?
Yes, we're a year and a half in.
So now they're starting to freak out. They also found 4 more bodies in April of 1983. So now they're like finding these clusters of bodies where he's leaving them in these wooded areas. And now he's not putting them in the river. He's putting them in these wooded areas because he's going back and visiting them. He never took souvenirs. He just kept going back and cuddling them and other things.
Yeah. So later on, after the first 5 that were found in the river, he started to pose them. And it wasn't just the one with the wine and the sausage. There was several that were posed in positions. Then the cluster started, and then the burying started. So through his interviews with police and psychotherapists, he stated that he started to go back, and he would he was a necrophiliac, so he had sex with the bodies later, and he said that he didn't differentiate between sex between a live person and a dead person. And he said the dead person actually was a benefit to them because it kept him from going to find a live victim later. So he would use this dead person for however long, and then he just move on to the next. He stated that he started to cluster them because he would drive by these areas and he would be able to remember, oh, well, there's 3 girls. Yeah. And I know exactly which 3 those are. And this is what happened.
And I can go there.
Right. And he can go visit these places. And through interviews with his ex-wives, it was actually found that he had taken some of him and his ex-wives had sex at some of these places where these bodies were actually at.
Ooh, that's so creepy.
Yeah. So, and they didn't know, because they're just like, oh, he's a freak. He likes, he likes to have it outside. So they didn't think anything of it until the body started to be found and all the questions started to come up. And then they're like, holy shit, like what was going on? So then when he started to bury them, he stated it was because he wanted to make sure that he wouldn't go back. It was supposed to be a deterrent for him not to go back to do it. So he started to bury them instead.
So Nick Proman says the police department was amazing. Ha ha ha. I'll tell you, Nick, there was protests. There was people in the streets saying, you guys aren't doing enough. And the cops are like, there is nothing to go on. We're staking out Highway 99. We're doing all this stuff. And so they formed the Green River Task Force, because the whole entire area is just terrified, and people are freaking out, and they're going out when they're having the marches with the banners, and they were not taking it lying down. They were pissed.
They were, because they were like, how many more victims do y'all need before you can figure out what's going on, who this person is? There has to be something for them to find. Unfortunately, in the 80s, DNA wasn't a thing.
No computers.
Nothing. It was very limited. They could barely do hair and saliva analysis back then. They actually used saliva back then to try to find a blood type if there wasn't blood on any of the victims. So it was very primitive at that time. And that actually worked to his advantage, unfortunately.
So yes, please hit the like and subscribe. Everybody, we did finally hit our next goal. Thank you so much for the subscriber push. We're so glad that you guys like us enough to subscribe and hang out with us.
Over 400. We definitely appreciate it. And tell your friends we like being here with y'all, and we definitely appreciate it.
So every Wednesday, we usually just do one Criminals and Cocktails a month on the 4th Wednesday, but we thought we'd throw a bonus in this month since I was sick last week. So
absolutely. Yes, Adriana, you're right. There is a lot of times where sex workers and prostitutes do get overlooked. And that was part of the big outcry of people. It was like, even though this is what they do for, quote unquote living, they're still people. They still have families, and they still need to be looked after if it was, your sister or your brother or anything like that. So I am glad that they did protest on that to get a little bit more vision on it.
So we're at about 9:55 right now. We're probably going to run a little over. This case had a lot of meat to it, but we'll try to get through this a little bit quicker for you. So by the end of October 1983, they have had 13 bodies found and 25 confirmed missing girls from this area.
Yes.
That's a lot in a year. That's a lot. So November 1983, they find Mary Meeham. She's 18 and 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
I mean, special place in hell. Just saying.
I agree.
and they talk about, not only did he have sex with these women and kill these women, there was a lot of gruesome stuff that was done to these women that we don't need to get into, but it's yucky. So, and a lot of it was psychological as well. But 8 months pregnant, no, there's no forgiveness for that. No. So that was in November of 1983. Let's move on to a little bit happier part of our murder. So in 1983 in Auburn, now that Auburn is 30 minutes away from Seattle, it's south.
Yeah.
And they found Kimmy Kay. She's 16. They found her skeletal remains, but her skull was gone. I don't believe they ever found the skull, did they, Jen?
No, I think they never found her skull, unfortunately.
That's okay. Yeah. All right. And she was the one that was a high class call girl, if I remember right.
Yeah, so this is the one that you would kind of almost have to call for, not someone that you would just pick up on the strip. So it was a little bit a higher class person that you could spend your time with.
Sorry, I just saw William's comment. You got to lighten this dark stuff up every now and then. Yeah, our algorithm on the computers, you guys are all screwed. There's going to be all kinds of Facebook ads and stuff popping up all over your computer.
Yeah, I look up a lot of stuff. I look at a lot of different sites, so it doesn't look that great.
Okay, so February and March of 1984, they find 6 more bodies. So Gary would talk later about how this is when they're finding all these bodies, and he kind of felt like, you guys are taking my stuff. Quit taking my bodies. Those are my bodies. I put them there. Yeah. I want to go back and see. He's mad.
Yeah, he was not happy.
Shit.
Yeah.
I mean, God, he literally didn't think like other people. How dare you take my stuff? Yeah. And it was stuff. He can't remember the color of their hair or any details about these girls, really.
No, he just remembers the dump sites.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what he remembers the most, is where he placed them more than who they were.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was efficient and slimy.
Yeah.
So at this
Yeah, it is. It's messed up. I can't hear you, Michelle.
There we go.
Ah, there you go. Perfect.
I was wondering, what is the appropriate word? Do you use streetwalker, prostitute, sex worker? I don't know.
I mean, the technical term
it's a profession.
Is prostitute. It is a profession. But yeah, it is a prostitute. Is really what it is.
Prostitute. Okay. So the task force is starting to go out and interview these prostitutes on the highway. They're just looking for anything they can. This is about the time that Ted Bundy comes forward. Now, can you imagine? They're like, God, this guy's famous enough. Do we really want to stroke his ego right now?
Yeah, and he wrote a letter saying like, hey, I can help you out with this. Coming from, a person that knows these things. Let me just give you my kind of profile on your killer, like what you're missing, let me kind of give you my insight on it. And they took him up on it, which I thought was funny.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I don't know.
And there was a lot of different opinions on it. Some people say he actually, wanted to help and gave his opinion, and others say it was because it was getting close to his execution date. So he was trying to get involved in something to push his execution out further. So it's on both sides. They're like, he wanted to help, and other people are like, no, he was doing it for his own reasons.
Yeah. Yes. Pinch Hitter. Everybody head over to Pinch Hitter when we finish up. He's got a great channel. Definitely go check that out. And I believe his link is dropped in the chat. So
absolutely. Definitely check him out after we're done here. It's a good time.
What's weird is in 1985, it stopped. Like there was a moment in time where no women were going missing.
No.
They're like, oh, well, chances are he moved, he died, or he's in prison.
Yeah, they kind of just were like, oh, okay, we're going that route. Like, because it did. The body count started to dry up. They weren't finding anybody new. They weren't getting any leads. They weren't able to get any DNA off of the later bodies they found because of the decomposition and that they were skeletal remains. Yeah. The only DNA evidence that they got was off of the first 5. And the reason they were able to do that is because they found them pretty quickly in the river after he had killed them. He had stated for a while that he, didn't have sex with these women. He just killed them kind of deal.
Yeah.
But they were able to recover semen and hair and things like that off of the first 5. So they had that from 83 and 84, and they froze it because at that time, we didn't know what we were going to do with it because the testing wasn't there at that time.
Well, and they said that they found specifically on 2 women, he had placed items inside them, and that's where they got his DNA from.
Yeah,
so we're just gonna leave that there. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't a good person by any means at all. He tried to keep himself out of it. Like, he wanted to keep going as long as he could. He didn't feel any conscience towards it. Not any point where he's like, oh, I feel bad, I've killed, up to this point, 49, 50 people.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't anything like that. It was something that he was okay with. It was something he felt was fine, and that's what he went with.
First off, Richie Z is saying, no audio.
Oh.
Do we not have audio?
I can hear you.
Okay. And then Pinch Hitter, you are a mod now. Go ahead and drop your link. I'd love for that so that people can go see you. And just a heads up, my wonderful, my daughter's in the chat. Be nice.
Oh, hi. I'm so happy you're here.
So she came to listen to our Criminals and Cocktails. It's the first time, so let's not scare her off. No. So now we're like, they're getting into where they've got this DNA frozen. They found this stuff because he put things where things should not be. And they're starting to talk about his truck, right? Because he's using this pickup for every person that he's picking up, right?
Yes.
So he started dating Judith Lynch in 1985. This is when things just went quiet as far as missing girls. He fell head over heels for her. She fell head over heels for him.
Yeah, and here they are.
They were like the kindest, sweetest couple. And he said later, I just wanted so badly to love and care for her without her having to deal with me killing people. I don't know if that's true, but I think he liked the things that she did for him. She made him feel special. She made him the priority. So at this point, he did slow down. Later, he would say that then he realized he didn't really want to stop. He really wanted to kill people. He just did it less frequently.
Yeah, he stated that because of Judith, that he didn't feel the need to kill so frequently. So the times he went down on his killing time frames of how many he was doing, he actually attributed to her. Even after trial, he would write her numerous letters apologizing for putting her through it and all of that. And what's really weird is she actually came out and stated that she felt that because they were together, she saved other women's lives because he didn't kill so often.
Yeah.
I find that particularly fucking odd.
What's particularly fucking odd is that when she moved in with him, she was sleeping in the bed where he claims to have killed 30 women. So, so you meet the man of your dreams and you find out 14 years later that you were sleeping in the bed where he was having sex with and murdering women.
Yeah.
And you had no idea that.
No, none of his wives came out, and they said they did not know anything of it. The first 2 wives weren't really around that much because he was like in the service and things like that. So it was like he wasn't there that often. So they split up. The second wife, they cheated on each other constantly, so they split up. So the third wife, she didn't find anything odd other than he would go out late or he would go to work really, really early in the morning. And when they first started dating, his house didn't have any carpet. And the reason for that is because he used it to roll up bodies of prior sex workers that he had murdered. So that was the only thing.
It was a prior renter that peed on the floor.
Yeah, so he came up with a lot of excuses, but his wife stated that they did not suspect that he was doing any of these things.
So between June of 1985 through June of 1986, they find 8 more bodies.
Yes.
In June of 1986, Paige is a friend of Kimberly Nelson. So she stated that she saw her friend when they were turning tricks get into the truck with him. She saw him, and he apparently came back later and was kind of asking where your friend is or whatever. So she went to the cops and she tells them, and they bring in a sketch artist. So
absolutely.
Now, then they get her and Rebecca. Remember, Rebecca's the one who got away. And her and Rebecca, they give them a photo lineup of sketches, and they both immediately point to Gary.
Yes, they picked him out.
Didn't even hesitate.
No.
So at this point, they are surveillance him. And it was those past arrests, right, Jen, where they were able to get a search warrant?
Yes. So because of his prior arrest in 1980, 1982, both for solicitation, in the 80s, he was also picked up a sex worker and like basically beat her, but she didn't die. And he got off of that saying that it was self-defense. So they started looking at all of these issues within him. They're like, okay, let's see. This guy's been at all of these places that we've been talking about. His name has come up frequently. Yes, in 1984, they did talk to him previously. He did take a polygraph and he passed. So
yeah, passed a polygraph.
Passed.
Because if you have no empathy or feelings, why wouldn't you?
Right. And then they even came out and said that the polygraph that they gave wasn't even that thorough. It wasn't asking specifics about the victims. It wasn't asking specifics about dump sites. It was a very general polygraph.
Yeah.
What's your name? Where are you from? What's your age? Have you ever been with a prostitute? All of like general questions. And if you can nail it, and he did. And so in 84, he passed the polygraph. So they stopped looking at him at that point. So when we get to in 87, they're like, hey, look at all of this evidence and all these little idiosyncrasies that we're finding. Let's go ahead and get a search warrant. And they were able to get it, luckily. And so search his house. They don't find a damn thing. They don't find anything at all. He had switched vehicles. Had a different car.
And he didn't keep any souvenirs because he was just going out to the woods and having sex with the bodies. He didn't need souvenirs.
Absolutely. So the only thing that they were able to get from him was actually hair and saliva samples at that time. And because of it being in 87 and them not having the testing at that time, and also because he passed a polygraph in 84, that they did nothing with those samples. They just sat in the freezer.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Think about it. There's no computers. It's all on paper. People can judge now looking back at the police work, but they were very limited, and
they were. And they actually went on to a computer system, and they started entering all this information regarding the Green River Killer, all of the victims, all of the evidence that they have found, all of the notations and things.
Yeah.
And what happens? Computer system totally breaks down and they lose a year and a half worth of work.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to start over. And start entering all this information into this computer database and all the system because it's brand new. It's all manual. There's no scanning docs and looking at, super numbers or anything. It's completely manual entry.
So, okay, so they've done this. They've gathered all this stuff up. They're trying so hard, and there's nothing on this guy. And then in 1987, they find another body of Cindy Ann Smith. And then in 1988, they find 2 more bodies, Deborah Gonzalez and Deborah Estes.
Oh, Your audio went out, Michelle. Oh, cooler running. We're glad you're here too.
Oh, actually, my whole computer froze.
Cheers.
Back now.
Oh, good.
Goodness sakes, all these technical difficulties. I had this really great mic and it came with a really crappy cord. So we need to replace that cord. By the way, we have Patreon. You join our Patreon, help me get a new cord.
Absolutely. Oh, and speaking of Patreon, this is actually a episode that our Patreons picked. We did put up a poll with a few cases, and this is the one that won out. So thanks, Patreons, for picking the case this week.
Yes. So in the ticker there, we've got our merch. We also have 7 new glasses that are up now. So check those out. So, okay, now we're into February of 1990, and they find Denise Bush's skull. Now, they had found her body previously without a skull, so now they found her skull in some wooded area.
It was about 5 miles apart from where they found the body, and I think it was like 2 years from the time they found the body to the time they found the skull.
Yeah, and so in 1990, at this point, they disband the whole Green River Task Force, and they officially close his investigation because they have nothing on him. They're like, there's nothing there, so we're done. And they disband the task force because people are like, why are you spending all this money? You guys aren't doing shit.
Absolutely. Per the Seattle Times during this, they came out and stated they disbanded the task force, the Green River Task Force, down to 1 detective out of 30. And with doing so, it was because they had spent up to this point $15 million on investigating the manpower, going to all these places, the excavations, all of this time that they're putting in, and they're getting nothing out of it. They're just getting a pile of evidence and nowhere to go. So and
how frustrating would that be if you're on that task force and you've dedicated years to it, and then they're like, we're done.
Yeah. And they got sent to other cases, and unfortunately the police don't have a say. They're like, okay, you're done. This is what your new assignment is. So they did disband it down to 1 person, unfortunately, because of the outcry, not only from the public, but also people within the political arena because of the amount of money that was being sent and the lack of results.
Let's all just take a moment and appreciate Nick Proment's comment here. Yeah. Just saying.
Yes.
So, anyway, so back to now we're in what, September? No, where are we? Oh, April of 2001.
Yes.
So they start a whole new task force. So now we're like 11 years after they disbanded the task force?
Yes. So 11 years later. So the original detective that was actually the last detective left on the original task force became the police chief. So he was like, this is bullshit. We're going to get this taken care of. Let's do what we need to do. And he actually connected with the other police investigator that stayed on the case, even though he was working on other ones because he had been there from the start. And he was like, let's dig into this. And he said, we have DNA evidence. And he was like, yeah, in 83 and 84, obviously we had nothing to go off of. He's like, it's 2001. We're talking 11 years since this last go round. Let's send this to the lab to get tested.
Yeah. So they've been sitting on this all this time. And now they're finally getting technology to do something with it. So April of 2001, they send it off. September of 2001, it's finally confirmed. It is a confirmed match to 2 of the victims. Yes. That's those 2 victims I was talking about that, whoop. Anyway, so they get that. And then November 30th of 2001, they go to his place of work that he's been at for 32 years. Yes. And they arrest him.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Happy day.
Yes. And he was at work. He's been going to work for the last 30 years and getting away with it. And so the last thing he thought when police showed up at his employer was that he was going to be arrested.
So, good night, Big Vic.
Oh, night, Big Vic. Thanks for stopping by. We're glad you're here. Cheers and good night.
I'm so glad you guys are hanging tight with us. We're getting there to the end. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it.
There.
A lot of content on this one. Okay, so now we have him arrested. We're all excited. This detective who's dedicated decades to this, he's excited. People are starting to finally think they're going to get some closure. And so then he starts talking to them. April of 2003, he leads them to the body of Pammy Annette Avant.
Yes.
Avant. I probably messed that name up. I'm so sorry. So at this point, he's starting to play ball a little bit. You know, he doesn't have any attachment to anything he did. No remorse, no anything. When you watch, and you could look up his confessions online. Absolutely. He's just talking. He could be talking about going to the grocery store and buying green beans. It's not anger. It's just like any normal day. Yeah, I did all this detailed stuff and this and that and bought my green beans.
Very matter of fact. I did watch the video of him in court, saying he was guilty of these charges. And it was after every single one. And he was like, guilty. Yeah. And it was like, nothing changed. And he didn't have any remorse. There wasn't a change in his face or his body language. It was just like, yep, I'm here. And that's just the way he is. But if you do want to dig deeper into it, his confession tapes are out there. His court cases are out there. You can definitely take a look out of there. Yeah. His the plea agreement is online as well. You can definitely look at those. And all of the victims' names are listed online as well. We definitely did not go into all of them because there are several. We would not have enough time to go into detail with all of them. So, but definitely if you want to take a look, you can go.
The list of victims one of the links is in our description down below. So if you'd like to see the confirmed victims, there's a link. There's no way we could touch on all of them. The ones that we did mention doesn't mean they're any more important than the rest. It just happened to fit into the timeline of our going through the case.
So this is kind of a list of his confirmed. These are the girls and women that have been confirmed to him.
It's just too much. And if you think about the short period of time, he did most of this in 2 years. He said that while he was with Judith, there was probably only 10 women that he killed during that time. And the rest was all done in those 2 years.
Yeah.
And like I said, he is claiming to do almost double what they have found.
Right. And so the issue that they're actually running into and why the DNA was only confirmed on 2 of his victims is because even though he had a very low IQ, I think they said between 80 and 82, he actually would take cigarette butts, receipts signed by other people, food eaten by other people, and take them to his dump sites and leave them there so that when police would find them and they collected as evidence, it would have other people's DNA linked to it. So even though he might not have been smart on a educational chart, unfortunately, he was extremely smart on eluding police for as long as he did.
He definitely was good at his craft.
And he did state that his career was killing women.
So here we are now. He's been arrested. He's starting to talk, and August he takes them and finds a body. September he takes them and finds 2 more bodies. November he enters a guilty plea. So what happened was they all wanted to fry him. They're like, this guy does not deserve to breathe. He needs the death penalty. He's done for.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you have all these families that need closure. We don't know where their bodies are. We don't know what happened. So they decided it was better to get his confession and take the death penalty off the table so that these families could have some closure.
Yes. So there was a lot of differing opinions when the plea deal was actually publicized. So it took the prosecution actually 3 months to accept the plea. And
It did.
the reason being is they said they were originally going to court with 7 counts of first-degree murder. Only 7. So part of the plea deal was that he had to lead police investigators to these other sites of where these women were. It had to be truthful and honest. Obviously, they had to be able to test it and things like that. And then they would take off the death penalty off the table. And with doing so, they were able to locate a total of 48 pairs of remains that he was able to bring them to. So
and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Those families deserve that. Those girls deserve that.
Yes. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, I totally believe that asshole deserves to fry for what he did, but at the same time, that's 41 families that would have never known about their family members. So there's always going to be both sides of that. Unfortunately, because he does deserve the ultimate penalty of what our law has in that state. But at the same time, I mean, 41 families now know where their loved one, what happened to them.
And they get to, lay them to rest. And, I mean, you can look at it both ways.
Yeah.
And that must have been a very hard decision to make.
And it was. And, I can't ever place myself in that position because I've never known someone that was taken out like that. But I would want to know. I think as a family member would want to know what happened, or at least to know where they were. I mean, these women were missing from like 80 to 84, and they're not being found until 2001, 2003, 2005. I mean, so they went 20, 25 years not knowing, and now they have the chance to know.
Yeah. So they do this. He's talking. He's telling all the stories, just like he's buying green beans. So, then in 2003, he was sentenced to 48 consecutive life sentences.
Yes.
And then added 10 years per victim for tampering with evidence.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
that's another 480 years.
Yeah.
This guy ain't never getting out.
No, they were making sure. Yeah, because between the life sentences and with the 480 years, it's like excess of 1,000 years that he was facing. And so they took the death penalty off the table. So they just made sure that this guy was never going to get out. Not ever, unfortunately.
Yeah. So he was placed in the Washington State Penitentiary, which is in Walla Walla, Washington, which was like, it's those of us that live in the Pacific Northwest, like, we know these places and we're like, oh my God, they hold like the worst of the worst. I've never been there, but I've driven by it a million times.
Yeah.
So, but they had to put him in solitary confinement for his own protection. They don't call it solitary. They call it something else. And I was trying to remember to write it down to tell you guys, in that penitentiary, there's 2 solitary confinements. There's the one where it's like short term till they figure out kind of how bad you are. And there's one where they're like, please don't hurt other people or don't let other people hurt you. So
so he was segregated, not because he was actually violent towards other prisoners, but because he was actually a mark in prison. As many people that follow true crime know, there are rules in prison, and certain charges hold certain things within the prison community that you'll be held accountable for. So they kept him away actually for his own protection for 10 years. And which I found interesting, was after that, they actually were going to transfer him out of Washington to a federal prison within the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
And that actually cost the taxpayers $20,000 just to move him from Washington to Colorado.
So Mike Stahl, they took him from my neck of the woods and put him in yours.
Right. But people were pissed. They're like, why are you moving him out of the state of Washington when there's these open cases? You know, there's so many things that are still coming out. You can't move him to Colorado. So there was a big thing. But the reason they were moving him was because of the solitary confinement. So within prison, you know, there's mental health, you know, associates and things like that, and professionals that state, even though you're a piece of shit and in prison for doing this, you still can't be in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day for so many, you know, years, because it does deteriorate your mental capacity. So they're moving him because of that. But now they had to move him back, and they had to figure out what they were going to do regarding the solitary confinement.
So the officials start to release the video of his confessions in 2004. In 2005, they find Tracy Winston's remains. Then not until 2010, they find another body, which was Becky Marrero.
Yes.
And so in 2011, he got officially charged with her murder, and he pled guilty. So that's that 49th victim that he was actually convicted of. 2012, I love this. In 2012, there was a body that was identified through DNA, and her name was Sandra Major. Yes. She had been listed as a Jane Doe for decades.
Yes,
and
she was.
Because of the progression of technology, they were finally able to identify her and give that family closure.
Absolutely. And that's the good thing about technology and DNA at this point, is there is hope for some closure for some families with DNA that's been collected in older cases.
And so cheers, Lilith. Glad you made it for the end of it. So glad to see you.
Nice to see you, lady. Cheers.
So here is probably, of all this darkness that we've talked about, this is actually what brought me some peace. Was in January of 2021. Think about that. January of 2021, yes. December of 2020, right in that area, they finally identified the other Jane Doe. She was the youngest victim, yes, ever of his. Her name was Wendy Stevens, and she was 14.
Yeah.
And they just finally gave her family some closure and are able to lay her to rest.
Yes. She was actually found like in March of 1984. It was not given a name until 2020 to 21.
Yep. So, and here's the crazy part. You know how they have those Ancestry.com, 23andMe, all those sites right now? Her parents got one of those little kits to find out, you know, their heritage and whatnot. And at first they couldn't do anything with it, but then they decided to upgrade and do this other DNA part. And with that, the investigators had been kind of pulling this DNA stuff, and they were able to say, without a doubt, that's your daughter. That Jane Doe is Wendy Stevens. And
absolutely.
What that could have brought to that family just had to be, I can't even.
So Steve Burkhouse, so he did not fulfill his plea agreement. Other bodies found after seems okay to not honor the agreement of life imprisonment. So part of his plea agreement was that if there were other bodies found, because he stated that he had killed up to 70 to 80 women.
Yeah.
So he stated that he could not remember all of the dump sites. So within his plea agreement, if bodies were found, if they were similar, and he would take responsibility for it, they would just slap another murder charge on him. They would just add more time, and he would take responsibility for it. They'd be able to close that cold case. So he has that nice little asterisk in there, unfortunately, to keep his life imprisonment.
So real quick, I'm going to show you. This is, because this, like I said, this kind of warmed my heart. This is Wendy Stevens.
Yes.
14 years old when her life was taken from her, and her family now has closure. And then, you know, you look at her at 14. This is him around 15, 16. And yet he had absolutely no regard for her life or her age.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. So, well, J Max, yes, absolutely. I'm surprised nobody has gotten to him in prison. Well, it's because they have kept him in solitary confinement this entire time. They can't put him in general population because he is a target. Not only did he take his aggressions out on young girls and women, which, a lot of people in prison don't take kindly to that. It would also be something good for a prisoner to take someone like him of notoriety out on the prison yard. So they do. I mean, I don't care about it. Like, I think you should all be in general population and see how it goes. But for him, he gets to be in solitary confinement because, unfortunately, he is on mark in prison.
So to wrap it up, he is currently still serving his sentence at Walla Walla. He was transferred back.
Yes.
So he's at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla in solitary confinement. They are still, they have 2 bodies that are still unidentified that they're working on trying to get identified. Like I said, they just within the last month was able to identify one. So we're hoping that we keep progressing on this.
Yes, the genealogy is definitely taking form. So not only with the 23andMe and all of those types of agencies that take and do your DNA mapping and things, there's also a database that is being built by a nonprofit specifically for police officers and FBI and all of that to use. So, because when you sign off on your DNA, be like, here's my DNA, tell me where I'm from, and tell me where all my family is. You're giving them your DNA into a database. So that's why they're able to find a lot more of these people, because a lot of murderers aren't going to go tell their family, hey, by the way, I murdered some people 10 years ago. Don't put your DNA in a database. People just want to know where they come from. So they're going to be digging this. And because it is having such a good success rate for older cold cases, that it is going to start being used more because it is so definitive and being able to prove.
Well, and so, this case is still, it's got so many elements. We tried to shove it all into a nutshell for you guys, so we didn't keep you up too late. I really hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, it was kind of a bonus one that Jen and I threw in, and our cocktail is all right.
It's all right. I'm still sipping on it.
Heads up, in 2 weeks, not this coming Wednesday, but Wednesday the 27th, your very own Adriana from Whiskey Mountains is going to be joining us.
Yay.
And she's going to pick her top 4 cases that she's interested in. We're going to throw those in Patreon. Patreon gets to vote which one we do. Absolutely. And it's just going to be lost. I'm super excited about that.
I'm very excited about having Adriana on because I can't wait for her opinions and her insight on things.
Because she's so timid and keeps her mouth shut.
Oh, it's going to be great. I can't wait. It's going to be a blast.
It's going to be so
fun. It is. You guys check out the Pinch Hitter Whiskey Lounge after us. It is a good time. He usually does some games and things. So definitely go check him out. And we heart him. Yes. Yay, Jen. So, we're good.
Thank you guys for hanging out. Don't forget, we're here every Wednesday. And if you like true crime, that is the 4th Wednesday of every month, unless we throw a bonus in.
Yes.
If you had a good time and you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification. We'd love to have you come hang out with us when we do our lives. And we do have some Patreon merch and stuff out. But more than anything, we'd just like you to hang out and drink with us.
Absolutely. We love having you guys hang out with us, talk about true crime, or, talk about more whiskey. We definitely appreciate you hanging out with us. It's always a good time, and we love your smiles. So keep on coming back.
All right, everybody, have a great night. Go over, check out Pinch Hitter, and we will see you next Wednesday.
All right, you guys have a good night. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
Cheers.